Hello and welcome to Dabbling in Journals, and this is part 5 of my little Let's Learn to Watercolour series. And what I thought we'd do today is have a go at some lifting out, and I'm going to get started straight away. I have prepared my sketchbook by taking some Scotch Magic tape, and I've taped down here round the edges and across the middle to make myself 4 little squares, and I'm going to have a go at practicing some lifting out technique. In order to do that, I thought we'd start with a sky, because lifting out the clouds in a sky is a really good use for this technique. Oh, and thank you very much to those of you that sent me pictures of your sunflowers, which were fantastic. Right, so I've just put some water in my I've got a little palette here. I'll link this below if I can find it, because it's a really handy little porcelain palette that's got these deep wells, so if you want washy colours, that's really useful. And I'm going to use ultramarine blue. So I've wet my paper. I've actually made that quite wet, so I'm going to dab some off. I'm going to have a look at it, remember, to make sure it's all covered where it needs to be covered. So I'm looking in the light, and I've got a big puddle here, so I'm just going to take some of that water back off by drying my brush on my rag and soaking it up. Okay, there we go. Now while that soaks in, because remember we have to let it to soak in, I've already started mixing my blue, and as I'm going to be doing a sky, I want to do a little bit of grey as well. So remember, in order to get grey, we need to take some blue, whatever brown you have on your palette. And as you can see, you'll quickly get a grey, but I want a bit more paint than that. So I'm going to make up a bit more, add a bit more water. And that looks quite grey. Take a piece of scrap just to check my colours. So you see, it's very easy to get a grey by mixing ultramarine blue and burnt umber, or in my case I've used raw umber, and I've still got a nice grey. So I really like that grey actually. And then we've got the blue, which hopefully together will make a nice sky. So let's see whether or not our paper, yeah, it seems to me it's still shining, glistening, but I don't see any water running, so hopefully that's long enough. So let's give it a go. Oh, and I should have said before I started that in order to do the lifting out, we're going to use a tissue. Right, so let's get my blue paint, and I'm going to put my blue paint on the top, and maybe just tilt my sketchbook a little bit to help it run. And then I'm going to put a little bit of grey in places, and you don't want it to be too regular, because skies are not regular, are they? You know, when you're children and you draw your little fluffy cows all in a line, if you look at the sky, you'll be able to see what sort of mixtures, you know, and patterns the clouds make, and they're sort of infinite really. So it depends what kind of sky you want to achieve. So in this one we're going with just blue and grey. Okay, and then whilst the paper is still wet, you're not ever supposed to leave your brush in the water. So I saw that in a video somewhere, I don't know why. I think maybe it damages your brush. So just let me dry that off, put it down. So you just scrunch up your tissue, and this is the first time I had to go at this, so I don't know if it's going to work. You scrunch up your tissue, and then you just dab it to start lifting out the cloud. Now I've also read that if you want it very white, you can add a little bit of water, because my blue paint seems to be staining the paper, but that doesn't look much like a cloud to me. So what I'm going to try and do is kind of rub downwards to create a softer look at the bottom. And remember, if we don't like what we do, we can wait for it to dry and then try again. And here again, I'm going to lift a little bit out. I'm leaving the sort of grey at the bottom, but I want to just blend it a little bit. Okay, well, I think it sort of looks like a sky, but it doesn't look very dramatic to me. What do you think? I'm going to have another go, and I'm going to use a stronger mixture of paint, so more pigment to water, and see how that works. So before I do that, I'm just going to wet my paper again. So again, whilst that's soaking in, I'm going to mix up my paint. So this time I'm going to take a sort of darker concentration of blue. So that looks a lot darker to me. Where's my little piece of paper? Is that darker? Maybe even more. Because remember, watercolour does kind of dry lighter than it looks when you first put it on. And then I'm going to make some more grey. So again, with my blue and my brown to make grey, and just add your brown a little bit at a time until you get a grey colour that you like. Okay, got a nice bluey grey there, and I'm going to have another go and see what happens. So this time I'm going to put a slightly darker blue onto my paper. I want to put some grey in there. Oh, maybe I could just leave a little white spot like that. I'm going to try that. I'm going to put a bit of grey down here. A bit more blue. And that'll be enough clouds. Okay, and then before that dries, you see this time I've left some white space and I've used some darker colour. So I'm going to take my tissue and I'm going to try and lift out some of that, but I'm leaving a slightly whiter bit at the top, and let's see if we can kind of blend that out a bit. I think I'm taking off too much. Maybe I want to just dab around my white. Is that working better? This is really fun. Okay. I feel like I've took off too much grey, so I'm going to put some back. I don't think there's a rule saying you can't put it back if you take too much off. I don't know if there's rules with watercolour painting. There might be. And I just want to maybe dab out that a little bit and soften that edge there into my cloud. Oh, what do we think of that? Is that too much white? Obviously, if you were doing a larger painting, you would have clouds sort of wherever you want to put them, but you know, you want them sort of fairly haphazardly arranged, I think. Now, I'm really enjoying that. I'm looking forward to doing a bigger painting with the sky on, because it's amazing how quick it is to achieve. So the different kinds of things you can do are either to press hard or just rub very gently. So if you want to blend the edges out so that it doesn't look like it's got an outline, you can just press lightly. So I guess the thing to do is just take a nice big piece of watercolour paper and practice until you kind of find a technique that you find visually appealing. And I thought it would also be fun to do a sort of more dramatic coloured sky. So let's see whether or not we can manage that. And I went into Pixabay and I just put in sky, and I'm getting all these different coloured skies. I mean, that one is all sort of oranges and greys, which is quite fun. Should we have a go at doing a sky like that with some grey flat clouds? Okay, so in order to do that, I am going to, of course, wet my paper. Now, so in this sky, I want this sort of idea of a sun in the middle. So I've got some yellow paint already on my palette, which is cool. So we've already got that ready. And obviously I'm going to need to mix that with a red to make orange. So I've got some yellow. So let's take a bit of red. I use quinacridone red, which is quite a transparent, it's not a very strong red. I don't know, whatever you use may work differently. So I've got some red and I can easily make that into orange, or I could mix it on the paper to make orange, which would be fun. And I've also want to make a grey. Now, shall I just use what's left of this grey? I could do, couldn't I? Though there's not much there. Let's make up a bit more grey. So remember, that was my ultramarine and my brown. Okay, so let's have a go at this just a little bit of orange sky with some grey clouds in it and see how it comes out. It's quite exciting. Okay, let's have a go. See what happens. So I'm getting some yellow first, and I'm just going to do a little sun, and I'm going to leave a bit of white in the middle because I think that'll make it look brighter. So there's my yellow sun, which, as you can see, because it's wet on wet, is already sort of splurging out. And then I think I'm going to put some of my grey at the top. Put some grey here, maybe a bit of grey cloud here. Oh, that sun's really splurging out, isn't it? Maybe a bit of grey here. And then I'm going to make my orange. So let's put some yellow. Oh, I'm getting orange here. And we're going to put the orange along the bottom and drop it around the grey. Some sort of fiery orange here. I wonder if I'm working quick enough. Let's put in a bit more red just for fun. See what happens, because it'll probably all mix and just go into a darker orange. And then I want some sort of more yellowy orange at the top, I think, and we'll go back to a sort of grey colour. Well, it looks brown now. It's because it's got the orange in. I'm going to quickly mix up a bit more grey because I'm not sure I want it to look brown at the top. So I'll lift up. That's another use for lifting off. You can just take that brown out and put the grey back. Though I guess where it mixes, it's going to make brown. Okay, now that doesn't look like a sky at the moment, does it? Not at all. So I'm going to lift out my clouds. So I'm going to get my bit of scrunched up. I'll get another tissue. That one's a bit wet. I'm going to take some clouds out. Ooh, now that lifted much better than the blue, didn't it? And I want to just soften the edges. We've made a huge cloud. Where else do I want a cloud? Maybe around here, over the grey. And I think this grey is too dark, so let's get rid of some of that. Oh dear, this is quite fun. Got something on there. Oops. Oops. I don't know what that is. Okay. So I'm just sort of, I don't know if I'm getting a cloud look or not. I'm going to put a little bit of the grey under this cloud here, just to make it look a bit more like a cloud. And then I'm just going to soften with my tissue where it meets the white. Drag it upwards into the white to give that more of a cloud look. Does that work, do you think? Okay. And then I want a cloud here. So you can put your clouds wherever you want, can't you? And I'm just going to soften upwards into that orange. And the grey's already fairly soft. And I think I want a little bit more grey here. Going down a little bit more here. I wonder if you're supposed to add it. It's still wet enough. Look, it's just spreading in this lovely sort of cloudy way. Make sure I've still got that white space in the middle that I wanted. I think it's I kind of lost it. Actually, I just want a circle, don't I? So see what happens when that's dry. So just play with your paints and tissue and see what you can achieve. Okay, quite like that. I'm going to wait for that to dry, and then I'm going to paint in my sun and see whether or not that it looks effective. Should I paint it in now while it's like half dry? I don't know. How much do I want it to blend? Let's try painting it in now. You see, I'm so impatient. I never wait. So I just want some yellow. I'm going to move it over here. I want the pure yellow, not the orange. See what happens if I just paint in my sun. And then blend it. So I'm getting my brush clean, dabbing it, and I just want to blend my sun around the outside and then in the middle. Oh, I did too much. So let's take my little tiny piece of tissue and pull that highlight out in the middle again. And just take my clean brush again, dampen, dry it off, and just try and blend. I just want that like a really soft highlight in the middle. I think that's kind of working. What do you think? So put in my sun, clean brush, dry it off and blend it. Does that look like a sun? Do you know, I've no idea. I'm going to put a bit more orange down here. See what a fiddler I am. This is why I need to use just glazing techniques, really, because I can't leave things alone. I just always want to control what the paint's doing, and with watercolour you're not really supposed to do that, I don't think. Would I have a white bit just there of cloud? Pull that out. Let's see what it looks like when it dries. See whether we think it looks like a sun in the sky, in a cloudy sky. There we go. Okay, I've got one more square left. So what shall we do with our last square to practice a different colour sky? Should we try something like that? Oh, and look, the sun rays are coming down. Let's try and do something like that. Okay, I suspect it won't work, but who knows? You don't know till you try. And this series is all about learning together. So if you're trying this, let me know how you get on. And as I said, I'll leave my email so you can email me with your pictures if you wish. Love seeing them. Right, so I've wet my paper again, and I don't think I was as excessive with the water this time. Okay, so this time I thought I would have a go at doing a sort of miniature version of the, oh, I didn't wait for it to dry, I didn't wait for it to soak in. I think that matters. Probably matters. Too late now. I've started, so I'll finish. So I'm just doing my sky, might leave a little bit of white at the top. And then I want a big, oh, let's get some more grey, blue and brown. I want a big grey cloud with a sort of bit of the white showing. I don't think I'm going to have enough room to do my sun. So I've got a big grey cloud, and let's make that a little bit more dramatic by putting some red in the grey and seeing if that makes us sort of have like different colours. I don't know what. I'm thinking purple, because I want red and blue, don't I? Oh, that's better. That's the kind of colour I wanted. And then underneath I want sort of a grey. I've lost my grey now, I've turned it into purple. Let's just get rid of that. Make some more grey. with my blue and my brown. Oh, that's nice and dark. Let's put some of that into the middle of the cloud. So much fun. And then I want a really light wash of grey, so really watery at the bottom. And then I want just a little bit of yellow showing here. And I haven't got enough room to do those like sun rays that I was looking at, but I think you kind of would have to, I'm trying to think how you'd do it. Maybe pull down. Oh, I think I pressed too hard. Let's get myself some more yellow or orange, it would seem. Maybe just really lightly. It lifts off so easily. I think it depends on the paint you've got. I wanted to get that sort of feeling of the sun's rays. And again, I don't actually know if that worked. I think that looks a bit hard here. Okay, so that's my 4 attempts at different coloured clouds. Oh, I forgot to dab around the edges of this cloud, didn't I? Just to give it a bit of... So any of the colours that you don't like appearing or anything that you want to soften, you just do it with your tissue. So I'm going to let that dry and then we'll see what we have. Okay, so my little studies are now dry. They're very small, as you can see. I'm looking forward to having a go at making some clouds on a bigger piece of paper. In this first one, the effects are very subtle because I didn't leave any pure white space and the blue was quite pale, but I think that could look quite nice depending on the mood you want to create in a landscape painting or a seascape painting. On this one I used the darker blue. I can see here some sort of blooms of the grey that I wish that I had softened. So when you're looking at your studies, you can sort of see which of the bits you think are most effective and which bits you think you could have improved, and obviously that's going to help you next time you have a go at painting some clouds. So just making sure that I've softened all the edges rather than just letting them bloom out on their own, although sometimes they sort of just bloom or spread in a nice gradual way and you can just leave them alone. This one here, I think I was so busy focusing on my sun, I didn't do such a good job with the clouds. There's a hard line here that you wouldn't want to see in a sky. This cloud looks like it's in front of the one behind, which is quite a nice effect, but I think it just needed a bit more body and a bit more sort of blending around that cloud. And I also think I've made them look like little round dots, and I think it would have been better to make them look sort of a longer shape like this one is, rather than these sort of round. But I was quite interested with the effects that I created with the sun, and I quite like that, so I might use that in a landscape painting, but I would focus more on the shapes of my clouds. And then in this last one, again, I think I could have done a little better with some of the blending. I like the deeper colours in the middle of the black cloud, and I didn't have enough space to do much in the way of effect of the sun rays, but I think they look like they might have worked, so I shall try that again on a bigger piece of paper. And so I hope you found that interesting. I hope you have fun doing your own cloud studies, practicing the lifting out technique. What I'm going to do next with my little mini watercolour series is a landscape painting. I'm going to do it in stages, so I'm going to do it on a bigger piece of paper. I'm going to do it in stages so that I can use all of the techniques we've learned so far and see what that looks like in a bigger painting. And I'll do it in parts so that it can dry in between each video, if you know what I mean, so I can make sure that my layers are properly dry. So I don't know how many parts it will be, but I'll do the sort of wet in wet first. We'll look at the sky, we'll look at how we create the landscape sort of look of the ground, maybe talk a bit about the composition and things like that. And then after that, the final part of my watercolour series, I'll be looking at doing watercolour illustrations that I could use in my journals, because that's obviously my main interest. So thank you so much for following along with me. Have fun making your clouds. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.